Okay, so let's conclude this chapter as usual with some thoughts on, we will have critical reflections and points to ponder about. As we conclude this chapter, we encourage the really da, da, da. As we conclude this chapter, we encourage the reader to reflect on how different types of goods, which we can also refer to as infrastructure, must be combined to produce any final service. Okay, maybe we didn't say enough about this. We said iPhone happens with a network, and then the network is shared, and it's not subtractable but it's excludable and so on. So it can be like a club good. Sometimes governments make networks freely available, even though I can't imagine where, but sometimes you go to a place like Starbucks which makes Wi-Fi freely available, and they don't insist that you have to buy something when you come in, but people come in and sit and use it whether they buy something or not. So there is a free ridership involved there as well, but their business model is that as long as they allow people to come in and use Wi-Fi, it's a community that grows where enough people buy things, so they're making profit while providing a place for people to come and hang out. So if you buy a cup of coffee for, Starbucks is not cheap, right? It's fairly expensive. So overall, how do you count your own benefit? If I go to Starbucks and pay, let's say, almost 300 rupees for a cup of tea, but I sit there for 3-4 hours and I like the ambience to work or read or meet people, then I consider that to be worth an investment. But it's a club good in that sense. It's not a common pool resource, but free riders can use it as a common pool resource. So these are not exclusive. Plus, the road has to be built, maintained. You have to pay a toll sometimes, or it can be free. But if it's free and too many people get on it, then you have traffic jam and so on and so forth. So nothing is a good by itself. It's often in the context of what makes it usable. The example of Yosemite Park is another good public good or common pool resource. It's there, you can go there, but to go there you need roads, and there is a gate, and you need often to pay entrance fee at the gate, or you can buy a national pass which gives you access to multiple parks for all year long. You save some money by doing that and so on. So Yosemite Park is natural wonder that is made available to all. It's subtractable in the sense not everybody can crowd in, but it is not excludable in the sense you can pay and get in, but payment means you can get excluded if you cannot pay, right? But on some days of national holidays they make it free entrance, so anybody can go, but obviously that means too many people may go and so on. So as we conclude this chapter, we encourage the reader to reflect on how different types of goods, which we can also refer to as infrastructure, must be combined to produce any final service. Yosemite is a good said a lot of things, but here is the example. Yosemite is a public good, by this definition, but unless it's combined with roads, cars, or planes, so people fly in to see Yosemite, what services can it provide if all these are combined? And those are funded and paid for separately. Roads are built by, let's say, the governments, or maintained by private companies. Car can be yours or a taxi. Plane is of course often not yours, but you may be rich enough to do that, and so on. For some, it does provide a truly pure public good, simply in the idea that such a beautiful place exists. For most, Yosemite is in fact a piece of the public infrastructure that provides a common pool resource consisting of nature viewing time, exactly as the library is a piece of public infrastructure that provides a common pool resource consisting of book viewing time. So if you borrow the book, nobody else can have it when you have it. So there is membership fee, there is time for which you can borrow it, you get penalized if you don't return on time, and so on. Understanding the subtle nature of how almost all final services are provided by complex combination of the different types of goods we have discussed in this chapter is a critical prerequisite for designing institutions to wisely govern their use. So you cannot sustain the goods unless you know the infrastructure that makes it a good. It's public, private, common pool, or club good, and so on and so forth. Okay, so critical reflections. Social dilemmas are situations in which two or more participants can benefit collectively from cooperation, but an individual who is selfish and rational can also benefit from free riding on the cooperation of others. Okay, so I wasn't very strict or accurate on using this cooperation and defect in the prisoner's dilemma, but you can go and see it. But here it makes more sense. So if everybody is following the rules and norms and paying their taxes and so on, they are cooperating to build this good usable as a common good or a public service. But there can be free riders who can avoid paying tax, but use the facilities. So they are selfish and they are rational because they are maximizing their profit and minimizing their costs. So rational ignorance is often a very common behavioral aspect in the use of common goods. Okay, 4 types of goods can be distinguished based on the extent to which it is possible to exclude others, or and the subtractability of the resource. So we had private goods like the iPhone, which is yours, toll or club goods where you get membership of some sort by paying, public goods where you have excludability possible by, like say, Yosemite, where you have to pay a membership, or you have to pay buy a membership or pay a entry fee to get in, and common pool resources where free riding can be very tempting for selfish and rational beings, where you have, like stratosphere, troposphere, ocean, and so on that we talked about. In this book, we will mainly look at the problems of public goods, which can suffer from underinvestment, and common pool resources, which can suffer from overuse. So public goods, let's say it's a road or it's a Yosemite, and let's say park service is needed, protection of the resources is needed in terms of abuse and overuse and misuse by visitors. So there are investments involved in keeping Yosemite, for example, or the library as a sustained public good, but underinvestment can be a problem because either the county or a city or a town is trying to fund it with some resources which depends on people's cooperation. So underinvestment is a very common problem. But common pool resource like the stratosphere or the space or Yosemite, it can be overused, right? So how do you restrict? It's not easy to exclude people from common pool resources, so overuse can become a problem. So as we go with real examples and analysis of institutions and action arenas and action situations and attributes, we will understand much more of what are the social dilemmas we have to deal with to sustain these resources and goods. Make yourself think. Have you ever been in a social dilemma? Describe the dilemma and what you decide to do. It could be battle of the sexes or a prisoner dilemma kind of situation. What are the examples of public goods and common pool resources you have experienced lately, and what are the associated infrastructure that make this a complete resource or a good? Why is access to a resource a key component in defining the 4 types of goods? Excludability or subtractability, access becomes the key component. Why? Because you are intrinsically dealing with governance issues in terms of goods, whether it's private, club, public, or common pool resource. Access is a key component. Okay, so we'll come back and look at more ideas in the next chapter as we move towards sustaining the goods, right? Sustaining the common goods here, avoiding the tragedy of the commons. So this concludes this chapter. See you in the next chapter.